Hello, my name is Benjamin Timothy Goby, and today I'm doing an updated interview with my very first interviewee.
Richard Ashton. I'm an actor and writer and composer and general fiddler about with all manner of creative arts. And we first met at Comic Con in Gloucester um, 4, maybe even 5 years ago now, in what I believe was the very first interview of this series.
It sure was, October 7th, 2018.
Wow.
It was the Gloucester Comic Con run by Geek Events.
Ah, right, very good, very good. I knew we were in the West Country very nearly. Yeah.
Since our first interview, and also the very first interview of this series, what have you been up to as an actor?
Well, now we've had some very strange years between now and then. Immediately after we did our interview, I was doing more Comic Cons because I was very, very new to the Comic Con world at that time, which has been lovely. So I've been to Los Angeles, Minneapolis, Chicago, New York, Long Island, doing that kind of thing, which has been very good for me. It's like a kind of trigonometry in my mind. I like to know who's watching the shows I do. I like to know how they're made. I like to know something about where they're made. And so that little time was filling in a lot of knowledge about what, in that case, Doctor Who means to people. But I've also had the chance to do a number of Christmas movies in Romania, one of which is part of a series, the Christmas Prince films. And again, that totally surprised me by who's interested in those films and how many people really derive a lot of pleasure from them, even though not everybody thinks they're a critical success. So that's filled in a bit more knowledge as well. I wouldn't say that I did anything particularly new in the movies or in terms of the acting, but in terms of understanding how they work and why people like them. So I've been filling in a lot of my education really since we last met. Then of course I was filming a lovely short film for an actor, Chris Skiruff. He has a tremendous script, him and James Peaty put together, which we were filming just as lockdown happened. And I think they've got plans to make that into a longer feature. One of my things I've always wanted to play was a sort of gangster kind of, but I wasn't a boss, I was a henchman kind of boss. So we were doing that, and literally lockdown happened that week. We managed to get that shoot done. Since then, I've done quite a bit of Zoom meetings and conventions, and actually some more voiceovers. I did there was a lockdown animation series for Doctor Who, which I did a voice on, which was tremendous. But really trying to find new ways to work, given the restrictions that we're all in. 2 or 3 projects started and unfortunately fell apart because of COVID and funding issues connected to COVID. But now, as we sit here, I'm waiting on the go for a movie in India. The only thing we're waiting for actually is a visa from the Indian High Commission to go and shoot a picture about partition, which is actually quite a serious, rather formidable subject. So although there's been weird pauses, I feel I've kind of taken the time to kind of grow up a bit, really, and I'm ready to start work.
What have been some of the most enjoyable moments in your career since we last spoke, or as a whole?
Well, since we last spoke, the third Christmas Prince film was fantastic. When you're on a project which recurs and you get the chance to go back and shoot something with a group of people you now know very well in a genre that you're starting to understand, you can kind of relax. And you're not worried anymore. You know what your function is, and I got to play a kind of villain who we thought of as benign, but it turns out he was well-meaning, and all these kind of lovely, complex things. That was tremendous because it was going back with a group of old friends, and when we made the third movie in the series, and that was tremendous. But then hard against that was starting a new project with 3 people who I'd not worked with before. And I think in a weird way, lockdown has given me an ability to work with new people. And to me, it's always the next job. I love talking, well, I love to a degree talking about what I've done, but I'm much more interested about what comes next. I think like most people. So that's that. I've had a couple of things this month which are new and quite exciting, and that's what moves me forward. Is the next thing, and the next thing. I was in a pub last night and somebody introduced me as the guy who plays Little John in Robin Hood. Now, I had to point out I haven't done that for 25 years. And so it's a bit daft because the people he was talking to weren't born then. And also I'd forgotten about it. It was a thing I did, and I've got lovely friends and all these experiences and actor stories that people have. But that's not the exciting thing. The exciting thing is what comes next.
What have been some of the most challenging moments in your career since we last spoke, or as a whole?
I think one of the biggest challenges was prepping for a movie which didn't happen. And I was very sorry for me, but I was even more sorry for the people that had put years of their lives into putting the projects together. And I think that's the other thing I've come to respect more, is just how much work and effort people put in to set up these projects, which I get to ponce around in. And if it doesn't happen, or if it doesn't work the way they want it to, it's years of their lives that they've put into it. And I think that was quite challenging. And we always say, oh, we'll get back to it if we can, but as we know, that the river of funding, once it's gone downstream, sometimes it never comes back. And overall, yeah, I think being in a new place with new people in a new genre and being unsure of myself and what I'm doing, and those moments are very, very clear in my mind over the last 30 odd years, standing there thinking, well, all these people are trusting me, and I'm very, very lucky to be here, and I've said I can do this. I hope I can. But that's also the thing that drives me forward. I'm hopefully going to India later in the month, doing something new, and I will have that fear, anxiety, trepidation. As Roy Hudd once shouted at me from the wings when we were doing Panto at Sadler's Wells, "You said you could do it in the letter." And he's right. He was right. You did. And we're now expecting you to deliver. And it's those moments, I think, that are the most challenging and the most fun.
What do you remember the most about your first acting audition?
Let's think. Okay, I remember my audition for university, which at that point was the only way I was going to get access into the world of acting and theatre and drama, because there was nothing in my family, no one in my family had ever done it. I didn't even know there were such things as drama schools, and I would have been eaten up like a small fry. I would have frazzled in the sun of a drama school. And I remember putting together this little routine, which was launched in the Two Gentlemen of Verona, with a scarf I made up as a dog and talking about my feet or something, and realising I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know what the play was about, I didn't know what the speech was about, I had no idea what acting was. And sitting on this floor looking at these people who are all university professors and this kind of thing, and thinking, well, what are you doing? These people aren't even going to notice you. And that was a very interesting day, because when they came back and made an offer, and I got the points to go to university. That was the first time I'd ever had a success, if you like, or it's not winning, but it's a success. And that little thrill is the thing I kind of wait for when it happens, because I was genuinely terrified. And then my first professional audition was horrendous. It was one of those days, and all actors will tell you this happens if they're being honest. The person didn't look up from their page. They barely let me finish speaking. And when they did pick their heads up, it was only to ask somebody to go and get them some lunch. And when they turned back, they were irritated that I was still stood there. And they shall remain nameless, but I remember their name. And it's a terrible thing. I don't tend to tell young actors those sort of stories, but if they're unhappy, I ask if it's about something like that, because it happens. And so you get the bitter and the sweet. I'm very lucky. I've had probably more sweet than bitter, so I'm very lucky.
In which moment in your career do you feel you started getting more recognised for your work?
That is a heck of a question, because I suspect most of us don't ever really feel we have got that recognition. I certainly don't, because I think there's lots more I've got to give, and I get to play a lot of monsters and villains, and these days more villains. The thing I think I'm good at, and I haven't done probably since I was in my early 20s, which is kind of light comedy and music and a bit of pathos and all those lovely things together. I think I'm still waiting for that moment. But again, I think it's probably quite good, because it means I'm always trying new things and always trying to make it work. But the only thing I don't do is I don't look at my star meter rating on IMDb or whatever those other sites are that tell you where you are in the list of actors. No, it's not about that. It's just not about that. It's nice if someone recognises you and likes what you did. It's irritating if they recognise you and don't like what you did, or they don't like the show. That happens too. It's not about recognition. Just occasionally, if you get the idea that other professionals kind of go, yeah, he's all right, he can do it. That's tremendous. That's gold.
Is there any TV series or film franchise that you would like to work on in the future?
Well, we talked about this before, and my answer would, of recent time, would always be I wanted to be in Peaky Blinders, with a passion. It's a part of the world I know very well. Half my family, got roots there, and I've played characters from both the Black Country and the West Midlands a number of times, and I just so admire that show. I think it has a lightness of touch, and yet it has a concrete idea of its own world. But I guess the opportunity for that iteration is gone now. But you never know, that might still come along. I'd always imagined I'd end up in one of the Star Wars movies as a monster, but I'm 56 now, and my days of jumping around in rubber suits might be a bit limited. But you never know. I could be some sort of old Jedi sage tottering about somewhere. Only because I admire the franchise and I admire the storytelling, and also for me, the first movie of the Star Wars franchise was my sort of waking up. I guess I was I 10? Was I 11? Maybe 11, 12. Saw it with my dad. He fell asleep. We'd queued for 4 hours in the rain, and I was thrilled. So I think that it's recognising the power of a franchise like that, not in terms of money, but in terms of the impact it has on people. So in a weird way, it's the franchise that hasn't happened yet. I was very, very lucky to play Little John in The New Adventures of Robin Hood, which was not universally successful, but I loved it. And I know a lot of other people did too. And so the answer really to your question is, I'd love another one of those, where I got a chance to play a character and develop with it. And hopefully that it did well. Yeah.
Is there any particular role or character you would like to have the opportunity to play in the future?
We talked before about Fagin, because I'd always fancied doing a Fagin of a different kind. And I know a lot more about Dickens now as well, and about his social critique and his social campaigning. I didn't realise he was such a campaigning writer. And the nature of the way in which he's often pushed off as some kind of second-class Shylock or something, and I mean, there's a difficult play as well. And I started to realise that maybe I'd be the wrong person to do that. I know what I'd do with it, but I don't think it's necessarily appropriate. Other people are better qualified for that than me. We did also briefly touch on the fact that my first proper professional role at the university, bizarrely, was playing Prospero in The Tempest. And I said to myself then, if I'm still an actor when I'm old enough to play Prospero, because I was 22 when I did it, if I am still an actor when that age comes, I would dearly love to do that, because it's a wonderful play. It's a difficult play. It probably needs a new medium, to have all the images and all the different elements in it. But yeah, Prospero's hopefully waiting there for me somewhere. You know, I've done Merlin a couple of times and those sort of magicians, but it would have to be Prospero.
What are your life goals for moving forward, and do you have any other career ambitions?
Life goal is to enjoy what I do. Now that sounds really trite, but it's actually quite thought out and quite heartfelt. I spent quite a long time in Los Angeles chasing work I thought I should want to do, but actually I didn't really. So many auditions for projects where I thought almost, God, I hope I'm not in this. This looks terrible, but I do need a job. My ambition is to enjoy the things that I do. I also think that they're worthwhile, because what happens in your life is you start to realise, what's the old phrase, that there is more behind you than there is ahead. Be nice not to fill what's left with stuff that just isn't any use to anyone. Specific goals, more comedy, please. Some more music, because music was always a big part of my life. I'm always trying to convince a couple of producers I know to let me at least write some vignettes into a musical Christmas film, or what I would like a musical Halloween film, even better. But that kind of thing. And as a life goal, yeah, just to enjoy things really, and try and get involved in as many things that I think are interesting. I've taken up a big interest in horticulture in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, probably, since we last spoke. And that's branching out into all kinds of ways, because people are interested in horticulture and into growing apple trees and making cider and foraging for food and stuff like that, which are good activities in themselves. But what also is good is the interaction with people, and how often you find that like-minded people are also interested in the other things that you're interested in, which has even happened to us today, as we've been discussing stuff. It's back to the old idea of what's next, please. I don't have any specific goals in terms of, I don't know what actors' goals are, quite frankly. I want to enjoy what I'm doing, and I want to think it's good. I'm very lucky. I'm not ashamed of anything I've ever done. A few things could have been better, or could have perhaps been more successful by their own lights. But that's okay, because you can't always know what's going to take, what isn't. So the goal is just more enjoyment and more fun. Yeah.
After working professionally as an actor, how do you feel your career has progressed over the years?
I used to have a joke that the other meaning of the word career is to move downhill in no particular controlled direction at ever increasing speed. And that's kind of how it feels sometimes. Other people tell me, oh, it was good that you got that, or oh, why don't you do that anymore? As if it's a choice, and of course it's not a choice. It's because no one asked me to, or because when I asked them, they didn't want me to. But they did want me to do that. So that, if you like, is a career, but it isn't necessarily directed. The other thing that happens to actors, which as blokes we're very lucky, because our casting just changes. And that's certainly happening. The kind of characters I'm asked to play, the kind of things I'm asked to do is changing. Whereas for some people, it stops, unless they find a way to reinvent themselves, which of course, A, they should be allowed to do, and hopefully the kind of work that is available will broaden. And obviously I'm talking about women particularly, but also perhaps anybody that was cast for one look and then their look changes. Well, they're perhaps an even better actor than they were now, so why can't we have that look? And I like to think that that's improving. And maybe my career as such goes through periods where it's my job to stand at the back and be that figure. Well, I learned early on from theatre particularly that you don't have to speak, you don't have to move, but you do have to do something, and you do have to be something. So I'm doing a bit of that. I did a thing on Outlander, and they finally admitted to me, when it seemed pretty likely that they were going to offer me the part, that the character didn't speak. But by this point, I wanted to do it. and I had a fantastic time. We were there over 5 weeks in Scotland, and we went back to reshoot the fight as well. And it was just another acting job. It was no lines, but in a way, you got to do more because there was words to muck about with, you know. So, career, don't know. I don't know what a career is. I think a career is something that somebody else judges, and you just live through.
What would you say are the advantages and disadvantages of working in this industry?
Wow, that's a massive question. Advantages has to be the variety, the innovation and the variety, because even days can get long, certain tasks and jobs can seem very repetitive. You never know what's coming next, and there does tend to be a sort of every day's a new day kind of thing, every project's a new project. The worst side of it is therefore the insecurity that comes from that. And I honestly don't think everybody's cut out for, people talk about rejection as if it's simply an emotional thing, which it can be. But the other thing is, you go for a job, let's say, and you don't get it. What do you do for money now? And there are very few people who can exist free of that kind of thing. And, I was lucky enough to help bring up 2 kids for quite a long time. I've had several mortgages. I bought a house now. All by doing this. And people say, well, how, don't you worry? And the truth is, I guess I don't. Not because I've got oodles of money, because frankly I don't, and after the last 2 years I don't know who has. But that I don't worry. I try and plan, or I try and be available to new opportunities when they come up. But that sense of insecurity has to be the big thing to wrestle. I've heard it said this way: is there anything else you can do? If there isn't, then go ahead, do that. But if there's anything else you can do to have a nice life and a productive life and a safe life, then do that. And when I was younger, I used to hate people that said, oh, you can always do it as a hobby or whatever. I kind of know what they meant now. They were concerned for me. They were worried that I wouldn't be able to handle the insecurity. And I keep saying this, but I really mean it wholeheartely. I've been very lucky. At times when I've needed something, it's come along, or there's at least something I can adapt to. And not everybody is comfortable with that situation. And conversely, some of the things that appear to be the greatest successes, the upside, the payoff, if you like, turn out to be a bit, frankly, disappointing. Oh well, never mind. Do as well as you can. Do your very best work. Be as good as you can be to everybody you work with, always, and move on. And I always say to people, don't do this to try and fix problems with yourself or your life. It won't. If anything, fix the problems first. It can help you, and the attitude can help you as you go along. But it's not a great place to sort of have a workshop to try and fix an unhappy psyche, let's say, because it's tough.
For any individual pursuing a career as an actor, I'll rephrase that one second. For anybody looking at becoming an actor or any other role in this industry, what advice would you have for them?
Get involved. Get involved in whatever way you can that's of minimal risk to you. And if I'm specific, it will sound like I'm saying, I'm downplaying it and saying, oh, no, do it as a hobby or do it as but literally go and find somewhere you can get involved and see whether you really like the work. There are film schools, there are theatre schools, there are amateur groups. I hate calling them amateur groups because that's as if it's a different class of operation. Actually, some of those people are more dedicated than professionals and sometimes better funded as well. But it's a different setup. So don't be relying for your mortgage money or your rent money on it, first of all. And if you're younger and you do it through school, do as much as you can at school or through groups outside of school. And you might find that the role you thought you wanted to play in the industry isn't quite right for you, but there is another role that you're more suited to or would like more. Or maybe it's a mixture, which frankly has been for me. I mean, I subsidised having a theatre company by being a stagehand at the Theatre Hall in Norwich for a long time. I'm very, very grateful for that experience, also for that money. Have a go. Always have a go. And see how you feel. Yeah.
And also, how would you feel our interview today has gone compared to our very first interview back in October 2018?
Oh wow, it's a different world. It's fantastic. It's really, really nice for me to see, you know, how you've developed your interviewing technique, but also your whole operation of what you're doing. It is like being in a series at the beginning and coming back in, you know, once it's established. And we've had a lovely photo shoot with Leo today, which has been fabulous. I have done many photo shoots. I don't often say that. And we're sat here now in a great venue where we don't have the problems that we did before, with other extraneous noise and other things going on. I feel that we're in a very comfortable, safe environment, which of course is the place in which you get the best work done. Really.
Yeah.
You know, I don't believe in this business. You've got to put people under pressure to get the best out of them. Actually, most people do better relaxed, and we all seem pretty relaxed today, which is great.
Okay, thank you very much for your time today, Richard. It's been a pleasure interviewing you again. Thank you.
Pleasure's all mine.